So yet again, the garage is a mess a bit, but I've made a little bit of progress tonight. So still waiting on the headers to come back from Jet Hot. They just said that they shipped them Friday, so I should be seeing them this coming week. Look forward to that. In the meantime, trying to knock out just a few little things before the headers get back and I can stick the engine and transmission back in the engine bay. And that includes, I've replaced this hose here. So it used to be a corrugated formed hose which fit really nicely. It's a thin plastic, corrugated, and with an abrasion resistant outer layer. The challenge I had is that the fitting on the end was specific to the factory RS4 airbox, and so I had some adapto kits going on to keep filtered air coming in here. So this hose allows clean, fresh air to come in to the crankcase. There's a check valve here and flow limiting valve as well. But essentially in the PCV system, this allows fresh air to come into the crankcase while the oil saturated air gets plumbed through the oil separator and into the intake manifold. So this new line will come out and he will go to probably a dedicated filter. I left it with enough hose that I can terminate it wherever I want to, but that way I don't have to have any adapto kits going on. Let's see here. The other thing that I have left to do is I still got to clean the ports once more again with the carbon buildup that's there. Other than that, I've resealed these coolant tubes, new O-rings, so I pulled these covers off, pulled these tubes out, and put new O-rings on both sides, and then reinstalled both covers with new sealant, just as a preventative measure. They were not leaking in the past. The other thing I'm doing is I'm looking at ways to change my oil pressure monitoring setup. So in the past, I used this port here, which is normally just capped off, but this port here is filtered oil immediately after the oil filter. That most of the oil flow goes the other direction, so it goes down this tube. So unfiltered oil from the pump comes up this, goes through the filter, and then comes back out and goes down here, and then gets distributed to the entire engine. So this little port here is a nice source for pressurized, filtered engine oil. And so I ran this banjo here, like that, and that allowed me to monitor oil pressure with a 200 psi pressure sender. I never saw anything over about 80 psi, so I may step that down. But the other thing this port does is it actually feeds oil. I've got another banjo, so double banjo bolt, and it's a line that goes down and to the back of the car that feeds oil to the turbo. One of the issues I saw is that with these two banjos here, both the line and the sensor, that this banjo bolt didn't want to stay tight. So could be for a number of reasons, but I wanted to simplify that. So I'm going to keep this as just the oil feed to the turbo and get rid of this sender, so to prevent one source of vibration that could help to loosen that bolt, the banjo bolt. And instead, so I can still monitor oil pressure, I'm going to come over here, and the factory oil pressure sender is this guy. This is just a switch, so it's an on-off at a low oil pressure. It's an M10 by 1.0 thread, so I will replace him. I've found a oil pressure sending unit, 0 to 5 volt analog, that will replace him directly, and I'll feed that signal to my additional control system to monitor directly the oil pressure to the engine, as I have been in the past. And then I'll replace, let's say, I'll use that control system to ground this wire to the OE ECM to indicate low oil pressure whenever the pressure is below the same threshold that this sensor is at. I think it's somewhere around 5 or 6 psi. It's pretty low. So I'll have to redo some wiring, replace that sender, but it will consolidate everything down to one sensor. I won't have two oil pressure sending units in the system. So that'll simplify things a bit, also improve the sealing back here. So here's that double banjo bolt. You can see the two oil ports, and that would thread right in there like that. And again, the way I had it is oil pressure sending unit, and then on the back side, farthest out, would be the oil feed to the turbocharger in the back of the car. So little details, maybe insignificant to some, but helps me remember what I've got going on and the logic behind it. A lot of other little changes in process, and I really look forward to the updates that I'm making to the overall system here in the near future. Yeah, that's where I'm at. Hopefully in the next couple weeks I'll have some more significant updates, especially after the headers get back from jet hot and I get the engine back in the car.